We're live, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this awesome Tuesday evening, 7:30 p.m. Central, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. I don't know why it's so hard to minus by two. It's just my brain like melts. Chris from Dirty Tesla is on with me this evening. We're going to talk about all things Tesla, specifically FSD as well, and whatever else comes up. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining me, man. How you doing?
Hello, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I am doing great tonight. Just, it's time for YouTube. So I'm excited to talk to everybody and read some comments and stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. For those that are joining us on YouTube, Chris has been doing the YouTube thing for a long while. I actually just learned today that he's been doing this since 2019. He started as a sort of more of an owner experience type channel, and then he's transitioned into a lot more FSD type video. How has that been for you to sort of go through that YouTube journey? Because I mean, 4 years. If I use my experience, it's been a year and a half, and I felt like I've learned like 20 years worth of information. I can't even imagine what 4 years on YouTube is like. So, how does it feel? Like, what goes through your mind when you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been a crazy journey. I never, ever, ever would have expected it led to what it did. I started out just kind of like, maybe I can make my car payment with this. That was honestly like post a few videos here and there. And that was my goal. And it just opened the door to, meeting Sandy Munro and tons of other people from YouTube. And then now Elon Musk is following me on Twitter, which is like crazy. I don't know what I do that made him want to do that, but that's, whatever. And just having this access to talk to people like you and the people in the comments that, so what you said, the learning, I mean, I've learned so much, but it's been a journey with the different types of content because you kind of try to follow the algorithm, of course, but at the same time, you want to keep it varied, and YouTube really likes to stick you in a little box. So kind of struggling with that, over the years too.
Yeah, what I really enjoy about your content is that I can tell you put in so much time into the editing, into making sure that your shots are set up correctly. I just think that the way you record your videos is super high quality, and I'm not at all surprised by your success, honestly. And I just want to commend you for all the work you do. I think the way you cover the FSD story is super cool because you don't really hide anything. You just sort of show it for what it is, and you give your commentary, and then you do your wife tests, which is so good for me because I do my wife tests, and then I'm like, I'm comparing wife tests. I'm like, okay, like it's just great to kind of see how it evolves. And yeah, man, I just really like what you do, and I just want to give you props for that for sure. I know you put in a lot of time. I know it's not easy.
Yeah,
Doing this
thank
type
you.
of
Yeah,
content, of
I
course.
appreciate it. And there's actually a small amount of videos that end up just like canceled. I do all this recording and then there's something off, or the camera angle's not good, or the sound's a little iffy, and I'm like, it's not even worth, like, people aren't gonna like this. So I toss those. But yeah, I mean, I do my best to make it enjoyable and educational for people.
What do you find is the hardest thing about having a YouTube channel?
Oh my gosh. So in the beginning, what I loved about it is it was just like, this is my channel. I could post whatever I want. Like back in the day, I would post, like, I did a review of like one of my drones, I was like, I love tech. I just, whatever, let's just, who cares? Even though my name's Dirty Tesla. As it's grown, I feel like I never thought I would feel this, but I feel more of a pressure to like deliver. So that even comes down to these days, I hate to say it, but even like my tweeting and all these things I do, I just analyze it a lot more. And I don't feel like I have the freedom I did when I was like this nobody. Because, I still kind of consider myself just like some random guy. There's nothing special about me besides, I have a YouTube channel. So yeah, that's kind of sometimes, I overanalyze like what I'm going to post.
Yeah. Yeah, I can connect with that because I almost have like a defensive mechanism that whenever I feel like either the algorithm or the content,
Right.
I start to feel boxed in by it. I have like a defensive mechanism that's like, okay, you have to do something that's opposite of that, And like I try to do that on Twitter a lot more, where, I think the people that follow me on Twitter probably see a lot more of me as an individual than
Definitely.
they would on YouTube.
Right. Right.
I know we follow each other on Twitter, and I'm sure you see I sometimes go on rants, and I can't help it. I'm like, okay, this is like the platform for me to go on a rant. So I go on a rant, and it feels freeing in a sense, but I think part of me is also like, boy, but is this good for the brand? Is this good for the brand? You know, is this going to impact my ability to grow the YouTube channel, or to have people, you know, am I going to alienate some people with some of my views or what I cover on my Twitter? You know, I try to also do different things on my YouTube channel as well. And it's something I personally struggle with. And I feel like it's like when I talk to more, as I've talked to more YouTubers, I feel like it's pretty common, you know. And it's do you see yourself, like, when you think about your channel in like 2-3 years time, is that part of the equation, or are you trying to figure out ways on how to sort of have more people see more of you? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, because I mean, obviously you post to YouTube because you want views, right? But at the same time, of course, depending on what type of channel you are, you also want to be authentic and deliver things that, are kind of true and that people want to watch. So, you know, I go with what is popular, but that I also am like happy to be doing at the time. So even before full self-driving beta existed, I was posting videos of just navigate on autopilot on the highway. I mean, I was doing that for a couple of years before beta existed because I loved it. I thought it was fun. And after I posted the first one, people were like, hey, this is great. I want to see how the car performs in different scenarios. So I just kind of stuck with that. And then when beta came out, of course, that's the popular thing. So I was like, all right, let's just kind of do beta because that's what everyone wants. But then you get pushed into this box. So my channel was always this Tesla box, which I was fine with. Now my channel is like a full self-driving box. And so going forward, I do, like, I just posted a video about all that recent Cybertruck stuff that just came out on Twitter the past few days, because I love Cybertruck and I want to talk about that. But of course, that video is not performing as well, which, is fine. You just kind of have to push through that. So looking forward the next few years, it's just going to flow. Like pretty soon here, I'm going to have a Model Y 2-year review. I just passed 2 years and 40,000 miles. And it's an important thing. And it's kind of, again, what started my channel is, like, one of my biggest videos was my Model 3 review after like a month or whatever. And back then anyway. And so I'm going to post that. And then when I get my Cybertruck, I'm going to post talking about the Cybertruck and my experience with that. So I mean, for me, I'm just going to push through and try to aim for what people want, as much as I can.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I encourage you to make whatever you think is worth making, because I think the quality of your video is awesome. And again, like I said, the success you've received, well deserved. Let me ask you this, because Elon follows me on Twitter too, and it's like one of those like really weird things where I don't know if you felt this too, but for the first like few days. And I'm just gonna say it openly because I think it's a human reaction. I'm like, holy shit! Every time I tweet something, Elon's probably gonna see it, and it messed with my head for the first few days. It was really weird. Did you go through that too? Is that something
I did? Yes, I'm glad you said
Yeah.
it first, because I felt
Yeah.
super stupid about that.
No.
But I was like, oh my gosh, now this dude is gonna see what I'm tweeting, and I'm like, I can't. Honestly, like my perspective has always been like, I love Tesla, like I love everything about the company, but at the same time, I'm not just gonna blindly love it. I love it because the products are awesome and they've served me well. So I had 3 pretty decently big tweets in the days before he followed me, and all 3 of them were complaining about something about Tesla. Like I had to get my car towed because I had a flat tire, and I had to pay for the tow. Like roadside wouldn't help me because I had aftermarket tires, and I was like, that's stupid. Like that seems really cheap. I don't want help with my tire. I want you to give me a tow because I'm still under warranty and I have roadside, service. And so anyway, I was like, I'm not going to change like who I am just because, like, I mean, it's Twitter. Who cares that much about it? But I'm not going to change who I am just because he, followed me. But I did for like a day or so, just kind of like, I'm just going to think about this a little bit. So now I had the same reaction, but luckily it sounds like you too. I'm kind of over that now. And really quick, before we keep going, I just want to answer.
Yeah.
One person said,
Of course.
seems sus. Matt said, seems sus. L is uppercase. That is because I had an impersonator back in the day on Twitter. And if you had an uppercase I, it looked the exact same as a lowercase L. So now to this day, my L is uppercase so that the bots can't try to mimic me. I just want to put that out there. That's why.
Pro tip.
Yes.
Pro tip, y'all. You heard it from Chris. That's awesome. Yeah, I was wondering too, and I bet you a lot of people. I think that's just a very normal human thing. It's like when somebody that has influence starts like seeing, okay, cool, look at what this person has to say, and I'm like, why? It's like very awkward. But yeah, I think it's purely normal, and it's one of those things where I think as long as, like you said, as long as we hold true to what we believe in, and we're not, to the best of our ability, are really being true to ourselves in a public setting. And I think that's the other thing that's difficult about this too, is that it's public, like people are out
Right.
there kind of seeing what you're doing every single day. Is the best we can do. And hopefully people, value that. And if they don't, then I guess we got to do better, from that perspective. So,
Sure.
let me pick your brain on a lot of the FSD stuff that's been going on lately. So, you're still on 11.4.4. Is that
Right.
correct? Okay.
Yep.
You've had that for what, a couple weeks now? That
Yeah, I think
version?
2 weeks. So
Okay.
maybe, yeah, something like that.
Net improvement or net regression for you with 4.4
Versus
versus
like 4.3 or version 10.
3.6?
Oh, 3.6. Oh, better than 3.6. Yeah, better than
Okay.
3.6. So it's a lot. I'm finding that the 11.4.x is overall a lot better for me in terms of just like overall driving dynamics, like how it feels and getting from A to B. But it brought with it for me some like consistent bugs of like drifting into these side lanes that open up. Like when you're driving and a right turn lane opens up, let's say, it'll just kind of drift into it. Like happens so
Yeah.
much, and that never happened to me before. And it's like been months of that at this point with me voice reporting it every single time. And it's like, are these voice reports doing anything? So there's some consistent bugs that I'm actually going to post a couple of them to Twitter later tonight, probably. But besides those consistent bugs, just the overall driving is definitely an improvement for me versus earlier versions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've experienced too. It's 11.4 on the roads that I mostly travel on. It's exactly what you described. It's sort of the two lane, and you have these turning lanes that open up on either side. And there's this main sort of artery that goes up and down the Austin metro area where I live. And it's these are every like quarter mile, and like literally 4.3 was worse than 4.4. It's like it would try to take every single one. And I'm having an issue with lane selection, like being in the right lane still with the 11.4s, whereas with 3.6 I felt like on those roads it was much better. But then the flip side is in city style driving, anything that is not that type of scenario, it's significantly better. It's just a large percentage of my driving is in that scenario that it's not great at. So for me, it's a regression. It's like from a percentage of total time on the road.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
okay. Yeah.
I'm just curious to get your take. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting for me is I have, on my way to work, I have the same thing. It's two lanes. And then on both sides, we have Michigan lefts where it's basically a U-turn. And then the other side, just a normal right turn lane. Those open up kind of as you go down the road, they keep opening. And then, they're just there till you make the turn. And early in 11.4 on that road, it would be every single, maybe not everyone, but almost everyone, it would drift and I had to correct it, and it'd drift and I'd have to correct it. Well, then it got a lot better keep in mind, I'm talking about this one road, okay, that I take every single day. It got better, except at the end, there's one that it still takes pretty much every time. But out of the maybe 6 or 7 that are there, it only takes the one now, whereas before it was doing, between 5 and 7. So then we go to the other side of the state last weekend, and I didn't think much about it, but when we were on the other side of the state, it was kind of back to that consistent taking almost every one. And so it's, I have all these theories, but I'm like, wait, is my correcting it on this road? Because, Tesla talked to us about how they do that, kind of local mapping as you drive through. Is that kind of fixing these exact scenarios for me on this one exact road? I have no evidence, of course, that that's true, but it really seems that way.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious to see if I'll start to see that. There's another thing too that I've experienced in the past, and I'm curious to get your take on this. Have you had an experience where you would start with like a version, and then you would do interventions, and then you won't see those interventions anymore in those areas? Have you had that happen to you before?
Yeah, for sure. I have a really specific example of a roundabout that was unmapped because it was new, and the car just failed at it every time. And then without an update, it started doing the roundabout correctly. And I was like, it's probably just a coincidence, but it did it, several times in a row. And then we got an update, and that roundabout was then on the map.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, okay, so something, from my data did get sent back. Whereas another car, I got a loaner that didn't have beta, the exact same map version did not have the roundabout on the map. Whereas my beta car with the same map version did have the roundabout on the map. So there's definitely something there.
Do you think it's strictly mapping data, or do you think that there is some sort of like local learning that the car is doing through software? What do you think?
I don't know about local learning, but it's definitely a combination of all this stuff. Map data is super important. Yeah. For all of this.
Are you on the boat that so I feel, it's one of those things where, we've both seen this thing progress a lot, since the first versions we had exposure to, especially if you compare it to like just basic autopilot and navigate on autopilot, right? Just leaps and bounds more capable and better. Um, I feel like there's still a chance for it to be like, say, uh, complete this year, maybe without a parking lots. Like version 12 that Elon
Sure.
talks about. Where's your head at as far as completion goes, if we want to call it that?
It's so hard to say because, with a single update, everything can change, right? So we can go from, I mean, my intervent, I keep track of interventions and disengagements per mile on any drive that I record
Yep.
anyway. And it's definitely going up. The 11.4 series is better for me than before and better than that. Um, but it's still like tens of miles, between intervention and disengagement, which is definitely, of course, some of it is personal preference and some of it is for safety, which is much more rare, but it's still there sometimes. So a single update can change it so much that now I'm doing drives, with no interventions and no disengagements. With that said, how I feel right now, I think we're still far off because, part of that is Elon has said this so many times that I'm kind of like, okay, I believe he believes that. But it's this thing where you don't know what you don't know. And so they're like, oh, we're right on the cusp of whatever, is going on in his head. And it's like, dang it, that it didn't quite have the impact we were hoping it would on the car's behavior. So I am much more, I mean, I'm a scientist, like in my day job. So I'm much more on the skeptical side of like anything until you like show me evidence. So as of right now, with my personal experience, full self-driving my car, it still seems a ways off before I'm, like texting or sleeping or something.
Yeah. My non-scientific brain says that because everyone doesn't believe him, it will happen.
Yeah, sure. That's another way to look at it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's definitely that there's no merit to it, but yeah, it's been really interesting now that Elon has sort of put himself in this. It's not really a predicament, but it's fascinating to see that, the majority of people now, I would say, where let's say back in 2018, 2019, there was a much more reason to say really believe that it was right on the cusp, and put aside the fact that I think we both agree that we believe that he believes it, right? It's not misleading. It's just optimistic. And like, it's understandable to be optimistic about that technology. But now that it feels like the majority of people are like, okay, buddy, like, great. Like, that's awesome that you feel that. But let's actually see it, I feel like that is the perfect recipe for that single update, like you said, to come out, or something similar to that can come out and then essentially solve almost all things that are out there. And I wonder how much of this dojo thing that they talked about. Did you see that graph they put on Twitter with like the exponential line for the dojo compute and all that stuff? I wonder if that's really going to play into the next 12 to 18 months development of the system. It has to, right? How do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I believe so, definitely. And they even said, I mean, Elon has said, I can never keep the number in my head, but he said they need about 2 billion miles or something. Is that what it was of full self-driving? Okay.
I
To
believe
get
that's
to whatever, it's not like, oh, then it's level 5. He says 10 times safer than a human or whatever his quote is. But yeah, about 2 billion miles. And what are they at? 300 million ish right now.
something
So
like that.
if they continue rolling it out to new cars and racking up these miles, he said at, Investor Day, it's going to look like a wall because they're going to get so many miles. And you throw Dojo on top of that so they can actually crunch through all that data, then that's exactly what we're both talking about here is like update and, oh, hey, this is like way better than it was, a month or a week ago. And I do actually see that a lot in my videos. Like if you watch my videos a lot, I kind of say the same thing often. We're like, hey, this is better and smoother, but that's because it is like almost every time it's getting better than it was, and then you kind of get used to it, and then it gets better than that. So yeah, that graph exactly. If they get their 2 billion miles in the next couple of years, kind of almost lines up with their exaflops
Yeah.
prediction here.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's
Yep.
and I know Dave. I watched one of Dave's videos recently, and he kind of explained that this number here is bananas because most computers or the most advanced companies that have this sort of compute power, it's mostly in the single digit.
Yep. Right
And
now.
Tesla is looking to 10x it, more than 10x the best capable computer or compute power system or whatever you want to call it in about a year and a half ish. So it's crazy how exponential this thing's going. But again, we got to wait and see. We got to wait and see what
Yeah,
happens and
and
get some evidence.
yeah, and I'm not too picky about the timeline. I mean, if
Yeah.
my car can drive itself in 2023 or 2024 or 2025, it's not that big of a difference. Like that's world changing, and there's no going back after that. So
Yeah. What do you think about some of the there's always a negative connotation to self-driving technology. I feel like ever since the technology was even remotely close to fruition, people were like, I don't want to give up control. I don't trust the thing. How do you feel about all that? People not trusting the system, and even worse, just outright trying to let's say derail it, and we'll talk about that. A certain individual that's leading the charge on that. How are you thinking about that?
right, I mean, in my mind, all of that's pretty irrelevant because it's the story of technology since humans started making new technology. I mean, there was a time where they thought reading books was bad for your eyes and brain because I don't know whatever reason they had. So I that means nothing to me. I dismiss all that because it's like useless. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Like it's not even worth thinking about in my opinion, because technology marches on as long as people, that was one thing that Elon really like kind of changed in my head is as long as people are pushing, technology marches on. I always had that thought in my head of like, oh yeah, we'll get there with technology advances. And he's like, it doesn't just advance. Like you need people working on this. And it seems obvious when you say it that way. But when he said that, it really changed my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. Like you have to really push. But anyway, people continue to push. Technology gets better. It makes our lives better and different, and sometimes in scary ways at first. But overall, it's going to be a good thing. One last thing I'll add to that is, they used to have an employment where you would go around in the morning and you'd knock on people's windows to wake them up because there's no electricity, there's no alarms. That's how you got up to go to work, right? Well, then the alarm clock was invented, and you don't need that job anymore. Like I'm sure that was sad for a few people for a short amount of time, but like you don't hold back technology for people's jobs or things like that.
How much do you think your science background has shaped that way of thinking about technology in the world?
Probably a lot. So my background is in biology, so I'm not like an engineer or a software guy, but the mode of thinking is the same. Where it's like you need lots of evidence to back up any claim. If I see my car do something correct, I don't go tweet like, hey, it does it now. I see it, 3-4 times before I tweet it. I had an exchange with Elon on where my car it kept taking this exit on the highway. Like there's an exit on each side. It's kind of weird. And for whatever reason, the car every single day would move off the highway with or without a turn signal, sometimes with, sometimes without. And I just tweeted it. I don't know if I even tagged him, and he was like, what, that's still happening, whatever. And then he was like, that should be fixed. And next up, whatever the exchange was, I did it 3 days in a row before I said anything about it, and it is fixed now. So now it doesn't do that anymore. But yeah, that scientific thinking is, I think, pretty important to all of this.
Yeah, and it seems like that type of approach is also. It sounds like to me key to why your channel is so successful, because it's clear that's the approach you take for your videos as well. Would you say that's true?
Maybe. I mean, that's at this point, it's
Okay.
just kind of ingrained in me. I've been doing it for so long. But yeah, I mean, I would hope people would appreciate me trying to be thorough in the things that I say. Like I try not to, I've been wrong. Don't get me wrong, I'm wrong all the time.
Of course.
But I try not to put anything out there until I'm, at least kind of sure that I think it's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing that's always fascinating to me about the Tesla story is there's so many things that are very ambitious in nature, but I feel like the approach to get those things done, like the sort of engineering approach, but also I would say a somewhat scientific approach as well, to try and use as much data as possible to get something correct. Like I can speak to this from having been there, is like that's just ingrained in a lot of people and how they operate. It's very interesting seeing the company behave in that manner. And then you have a lot of on the flip side, there's people that criticize the company for seeming to be, oh, they're just kind of throwing stuff at the wind, and this is crazy. Why are they doing this? It's so dangerous or unscientific or whatever adjective you want to use or verb. And but I feel like it's the opposite, because I don't know how you get this done without a way to collect data and to get the data and process the data and validate the data and then send an update and validate that it worked. And if it worked, great. And if it doesn't, you do it over. The flywheel keeps going over again. It's just fascinating to see that dynamic play out. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but I just, it's a company that seems to be taking that approach as much as it can, but then it gets criticized on the flip side. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I
Connects with
totally,
you.
no, yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, Tesla does the things they do because they have data on, to do that thing. And again, of course,
Yeah.
they still sometimes will get things wrong. Like I think one of the most glaring things for me was kind of the yoke. I think
Mm.
now I love the yoke. We have it on our X. And people are like, oh, you're just a nerd and you're a fanboy. Okay, I mean a little bit, but I do enjoy it. My wife is not, so much like she's a little more critical than I am. She loves the yoke. And I actually kind of talked with her a little bit about getting an R1S, and she was like, yeah, it looks okay. Like I really like my Model X. And I was like, well, it won't have the yoke or the capacitive buttons. And she goes, oh, nope, 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 nope. She's like, I love the yoke.
Wow.
I love the capacitive buttons. And that's like a huge part of the car for her. But when you look at the overall response, of course, everybody freaked out, initially. And that was something like, who cares? Disregard that. Once you use it, that's what really matters. And I think that was the time where it seems like they did get it wrong, right? Because now they have the steering wheel by default. You can get the yoke if you want, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people are actually, upgrading to that, if you want to call it that. But for the
Yep.
most part, yeah, they make all their decisions based on data. I mean, and I'm glad to hear that confirmed from you, like from firsthand experience, but it seems like pretty evident to me.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely aspire to. Let's just put it that way. Sometimes
Right.
more than sometimes the data was crap, so you have to go
Sure.
back and redo it, right? But
Yeah.
at least it's a method. And yeah, like I don't want to insinuate whatsoever that they don't make mistakes. I mean, Tesla makes mistakes on the daily, I'm sure,
Hmm.
more than a few mistakes just company wide, but they get addressed, because it doesn't sit there. I feel like a lot of other companies, the way they behave is that mistakes aren't really identified and addressed. They kind of just exist in the background, and then you just kind of try to patch it. You try to put
Right.
band-aid on band-aid on band-aid. You're not really fixing it. Whereas I feel like Tesla approaches it much more from the, okay, it's gonna suck and it's painful, but we have to fix it, right? We have to sit down and actually fix the root that's causing this. So yeah, it's just fascinating dynamic. Let me ask you on what's been going on lately with full self-driving, some of the drama that's I don't know if a lot of people are caught up with it, but I want to definitely play a little bit of what's happened a space this morning from Twitter. But I'm assuming you're aware of the Dan O'Dowd, Russ Gerber drive along that they did not too long ago.
Yes,
In the chat,
definitely.
let us know if you're also aware of it. So what was your initial reaction from that?
Um, full self-driving makes mistakes. Anybody who uses it wouldn't be surprised by that. My biggest thing is I would have hit the brake earlier. I mean, Ross waited a long time to hit the brake, and I get that he was kind of trying to show the system off and be like, oh, look, it does all these things. But if he would have hit the brake just a couple of seconds earlier, there would have been no clip to show. And that's exactly how beta is supposed to be used. And I say this all the time, like, yes, it makes mistakes, whatever, it can do that. But the way Tesla has implemented this system, it's extremely safe because of that human driver. And he even said right in the beginning of the clip when they had the interaction with the garbage truck, he's like, yeah, normally I would just drive around it. I was like, then just drive around it. This is not the time to be pushing it when, you're live streaming or whatever, if that's what you want to do. But I would definitely hit the brake way earlier than he did. That was kind of
Yeah.
my reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, from my standpoint, it did seem like listen, it clearly broke late. I wouldn't say that it was necessarily a safety risk because it did stop. I think Ross's reaction to hit the brake did put the car in a strange situation. But from the best of my knowledge, that intersection hasn't really had any accidents that I know of that's related to full self driving. I could be wrong there, but I have heard of zero. So it looked uncomfortable on camera, and it definitely it made for some good ammunition, let's say, for the flip
Mhm.
side. But I think in the end there was no crash. The driver reacted to the system the way that they should have, because the driver is always responsible, and it's very clearly labeled beta. And I think the positive from this is that now there is data out there where Tesla could make it better. lo and behold, and
Yeah.
I think that's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah, again, I think he reacted too late. Like if you
Yeah,
maybe people disagree with me, but if you watch it back, and
I can
the
play it.
whole, yeah, sure, yeah, play it. The whole drive, you can tell he's letting the system do its thing, which is what I do when I make a video, because people don't want to see me drive. They want to see what the system can do, and I'm there to take over if I need to. But in that instance, it was clear to me that it was not going to stop in time. And I can tell you why, if we can talk about it later, but he just hit the brake too late. If he would have hit the brake earlier, it would have been like, oh, the car wasn't going to stop there, but there wouldn't have been this dramatic, like, oh, it stopped too late. And then there's the other car that, they almost hit, and all the honking and all that. So it made a great clip for Dan, and he only needs the one, you can ignore the rest of the I don't know if I'd say perfect, but you can ignore the rest of the hour of safe driving. You just get that one clip shown to people.
For sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen here, and then the audio should also play.
Sure. I'll mute myself just in case.
No problem. I'm going to play it right from where the truck was, so to highlight what you were talking about as well. And then I also want to play a portion of the space this morning where Ross was explaining sort of the methodology behind this test, and then Alexandra Mertz was asking him. Well, I'll let you listen to it. There was a lot going on. So let me go ahead and play this clip in question, and then we can commentate on it, and then we'll go back to the space and play that. Here we go.
Now, in real life, I would not wait for this. All right. I disengaged. Yeah. Yeah, see, I would have just gone by him a lot faster than that. It hesitated, then it decided to go by it, and then it was like, no. But, oh, there we go.
That was you braking?
I braked.
Yeah. It didn't crash.
I wasn't going to wait.
All right.
Okay, the point of the drive was to show that full self-driving beta is safe. The point was not to show it can drive A to B 100% of the time. So again, like I said with the garbage truck, he's like, oh, normally, then do that. Like, he shouldn't have even waited that long. And look what happened. He took over and nobody cared. No one cares about that part of the video because he simply went boop and took over and turned it back on. Nobody cares. What Dan is trying to show is that it's dangerous. And clearly it's not. Tesla has the data. Anyone who uses it knows it's so I made a video when Dan started doing his stuff, like because he said like cause for concern or something. I was like, there's no cause for concern. You literally just take the wheel. It's not that hard. So yeah, I get a little crazy when people are so like, oh my gosh, it's dangerous, because it's clearly not if you use it the right way. And Ross should have had that on his mind. I'll say it one more time. The point of going with Dan was not to show the car can do all this cool stuff, even though it can. The point was to show the way the system is put onto the roads today is safe.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I think the one really my main criticism with Dan, I'm not going to question his morality or him as a human being. I'm sure he's an excellent father, husband, whatever. But my main issue is that if there was really concern about safety, why aren't we focused on the primary things that cause death on the road, like alcohol, cell phones, right? Regular cruise control. Regular cruise control wouldn't have stopped for that stop sign.
Right.
And it requires the same level of attention than a driver on full self-driving FSD beta, right? So that's really it just seems like a very interesting approach. And I don't know, it just smells fishy to me, but I'm not going to pass, judgment, but it does feel weird. But I don't know. That's my take on it. Should we play the Ross's comments on that video and then
sure, yeah,
get your reaction?
I haven't heard the whole thing. I heard part of this.
So this is from a Twitter space from this morning. Wolf hosted this space. Oh, hold on. Let me make sure I did this right. I don't have producer wife today because she is busy with family, and God save me. So here we go. All right. So this is a space from Wolf on Twitter. Make sure you go follow him on Twitter if you haven't already. He hosts Grace Spaces at Wolf_financial. This is a space from this morning. Wolf is going to be sort of bringing up a topic of, hey, Ross, what do you want to talk about? And then Ross starts talking about this video that we just watched together. And then Alexander Mertz jumps in for some commentary. It's about 5 minutes or so long. So if you haven't watched this yet, stick with us. And it's I hope you have popcorn. Here we go.
Elon as well. Well, one of the things I think that many people, and I had this experience with Dan as well, is that they don't understand full self-driving, even Dan. And I have this with Chanos. I have this with Gordon, which we all know he doesn't understand. But what it is these people who are super critical or difficult about the technology actually don't know much about it. And even though Dan has a car and he like tests it and all this kind of stuff, it's like he hired somebody to test it. Like Dan himself actually doesn't drive. I think he actually doesn't drive. So like somebody drives him around in his Tesla, and I think he doesn't drive because he can't drive. So I was literally like, this will like help you, Dan. Like you literally have to pay somebody to drive you around, and this car will drive you around. And we drove to his workplace on full self-driving 100% the whole way. And I was like, see, Dan, like you could drive to work every day and home on full self-driving without somebody having to drive you. And so when you look at AI, 95% of AI discussion is around Chat and Bard and then Tesla. But Chat and Bard, which I love actually, are really early like AI tools. And Tesla autonomy is really advanced AI tools. It's just like a whole nother level. This new version 11.4.4 is the most intuitive and human version of the driving I have yet to see in full self-driving. And because I use it every day, you know, I have a different experience like than I think people who don't have any idea about it. And I think we're on the cusp of one of the greatest revolutions in technology since the internet. That's what I think. And Tesla's the leader here. So we can look at the price action of the stock. I think the stock's worth 250 if you do like 50 times next year's earnings, which is a very generous valuation in a very difficult stock market with very high interest rates. I think, you know, expecting huge gains from here might be a little premature, but I think that's short term. I think when you think about where Tesla's going to be over the next 5 years, it's hard to predict how much it can grow because of its dominance in several industries. And that's why I'm sort of against price targets. And, you know, Kathy comes out and says, oh, I think it's worth, you know, $2,000, or I don't know what it's worth, but it's worth more than what it's worth today, in my opinion. And I think over time, you know, I was watching Omar's videos of Cruise and Waymo, which I haven't tried these cars. And I was actually like impressed with Cruise and Waymo relative to where I thought they would be. But, you know, one of our employees' parents are firefighters in San Francisco, and they had an altercation with a Cruise on the way to an emergency. And one of the issues that Tesla needs to address, as well as Cruise and Waymo, is emergency vehicles. And it's ironic that of all the things Dan attacked, he didn't attack the one thing that I think is a legitimate concern, which is seeing emergency vehicles correctly and reacting correctly to them when there's an emergency. And that's something Cruise and Waymo haven't mastered, either has Tesla. And that's, I think, a critically important advancement. But when you look at Cruise and Waymo, they've come a long way, but I feel like their whole autonomy is geofenced, like learning from the Google method of like, we just know everything. So it's almost like on a track, where Tesla's cars actually drive and learn. So I just think they're different levels of autonomy, and Tesla's version of autonomy, in my mind, is the right way. Even though it's harder and it's longer and it needs way more data, it's learning how to drive. And, you know, the sky's the limit with this kind of technology, because I think driving is an incredibly difficult task. So I think for Tesla investors, this is a really good time, although it kind of sucks because the valuation is now where it should be, you know, versus when it was like at 150 and there was kind of upside there. But just the same, I think, you know, I don't care about Tesla stock that much because I'm not like changing my position on Tesla anytime in the short term.
So let me pause it there for a second because there is more. And I just want to get your reaction. I want to make sure that Ross, I played the sort of the first, 4 or 5 minutes or so. I guess it's a little bit longer than 5 minutes. Apologies, but I think the next part is really the thing that gets going to get going. Your reaction so far. Actually, before we even do that, let me do this. $42 super chat from the Quest. Thank you so much, Dirty Tesla. Love the content, sir. Keep it up. Drinks on me. Chris, if you're ever in the region or when I come to you, I'm gonna buy you a bunch of beers, bro.
Sounds good. Cyber rodeo
yeah.
or a Cybertruck delivery event. I'll be there.
Let's do it. And also, Tom, thank you for joining the channel. Your reaction so far, and then I'll continue playing it. Do you have anything you'd like to mention?
No, that's fine. I mean, I agree with some of what he said, and not all of it. But yeah, that's pretty level-headed.
Okay, let me go ahead and play the rest.
Ross, if I may just say two things. First of all, at 150, you were on tape saying you thought then the valuation was correct. So that's
not true.
I should also say language warning. If you have kids, just giving you a heads up, you may want to cover their ears or, yeah, anyway.
Said that Tesla
I sent that to
trade
you.
at 50 times its earnings, which currently would be more like 175, 180. But
no, it was 150, but I send it to you. It doesn't matter. And the other thing, while we're sending, I think you can send me some flowers because I've been digging this shit up for the last 2 days because you put us there. And I really think you owe everybody a little apology that you were so stubborn going there on last Thursday.
No. I think that you're acting very, very short-sighted. You don't understand what I have. Okay, so you can say what you want to say, but you're just being a little whiny girl. Okay, I got the biggest Tesla critic in the world on tape for an hour on full self-driving on a perfect drive. You haven't seen what I have yet. Not to mention there were several conversations.
Put it out. We have put video out within 5 hours of taking them. You have been sitting on them since last Thursday. Everybody is having a cramps because of your cramps.
I have a team.
No.
People.
And don't you try. Wait. And don't you treat me as little girl. I mean, I'm everything but not little girl. I'm 57. I wish I was a little girl. But the one thing that I just want to make sure you understand. For 3 months, everybody told you there is no point engaging this guy. This guy doesn't want to learn. This guy doesn't want to be shown anything. This guy was smirking sitting next to you because he knew very well he was getting you into a trap. So, you think you're smarter than him? Put that video out. Don't wait another week. You don't need lawyers. You don't need anything. Just put that damn video out if you think you're sitting on something.
Alexandra, I don't think I'm smarter or not. I believe in the technology, okay? I very much believe in the technology to a point that I'm willing to go to the greatest critic of this technology, the person who's spending tens of millions of dollars to hurt our company, to hurt technology, to hurt Tesla, okay? My goal was very simple, okay? And he was taking just as big a risk as I was taking. Now, it just turned out that the car had a perfect day. Now, I have a 3-person team working on an incredible video that will be as good as an ad for full self-driving that you've ever seen, okay? But I am not going to rush out garbage to counter some guy who panicked and put out some normal interaction that you guys got hysterical about. You're the one acting hysterical because it was a nothing incident. It was totally nothing. And when I put out this stuff this week, it will be extremely high quality so that it will be most effective and get the most views. So I'm not going to rush anything just because you're uncomfortable, for 2 days while I do what I need to do. Let me do what I need to do. What would be nice is this community giving me a little benefit of the fucking doubt. That's all I'm asking. Give me a little fucking benefit of the doubt instead of all you people running around acting like I'm some fucking idiot. Well, somehow I've made hundreds of millions of dollars in Tesla. So just give me a little credit. I took on Shanos. I've taken on all of them. Okay. And I will beat them all. And Dan, I've got down on his knees and begging. Okay. So just give me a damn second. That's all.
Okay, let's do the following. You do your video. If you get more views than O'Dowd got with his what you call fucking video, then
I'm going to get a million views, and you guys are going to help me. We're going to get 1 million views on this video, and you guys are going to help me.
How many views do you think he got on his video, Russ?
I don't know, But if you pay
Well,
for
that-
views, you know
Let
they're
me-
fake, and you know nobody cares what Dan O'Dowd says.
Let me step in for a
You
second.
go and talk to him if nobody cares.
I definitely want to focus on Tesla, but I feel like we're getting a little too much.
Okay. Oh boy.
Oh
So-
my goodness. I wish I was in
Yeah.
there. That would have been fun. I'd have been right up there.
What instant reaction? What's going through your mind?
So he's missing the point. It doesn't matter if you get 20 hours of good driving. You only need the one mistake by Dan to broadcast to go, look how unsafe it is, because everybody know it sounds like he was trying to prove to Dan that the car is self-driving already. Like, look, Dan, this car can drive you to work, blah blah, every day. But no, it can't. Like, what the heck are you talking about? So he missed the mark. I don't know what his goal was. I don't think it was a big deal for him to go there. I think that's fine. But again, I'm sticking to the one incident that Dan. How many views does his video have? I know his tweet is over 10 million, but I think the video is like 2 million views or something.
Something like that.
Maybe
yeah.
2.5 million at this point. So, and Ross is like, I'm going to get 1 million. And he doesn't even know how many views Dan's has. Like, so he missed the point. That's really all I can say about the whole situation. The point was not to show that the car is amazing at self-driving. Even if it is, that wasn't the point. Dan is trying to say it's not safe and should be taken off the road. And anyone that's used it or analyzed even just the videos, if they can trust all the videos they've seen, because there could be tampering, knows that it's not true. It is not unsafe, and it does not need to be removed from the roads. Do you really think Nitso would leave this on the road? There's already been 2 recalls. Do you really think if it was that dangerous? I mean, I feel like I'm in a little bit of an echo chamber here because I'm with you and you agree with me, and probably most people watching agree with me. But
not very scientific.
exactly. It's not. This is not a peer-reviewed live stream here. But the point was to show it's safe to be on the roads, and all he had to do was brake 2 seconds earlier, because when you watch the video, it is obvious the Tesla was not braking in time. And I believe, I could be wrong, there's no way to know because it didn't happen. If he didn't brake, he would have T-boned that white car. That is what I believe. There could have been some emergency braking right at the end, so it would have been a really light hit. But from what I saw in the video, from my experience with Beta, I think that would have happened, and he should have hit the brake 3 seconds earlier, and we wouldn't even be talking about any of this. He can't put out a video. I don't care what footage he has, unless the Tesla like rescues a kitten from a burning building. There's no footage of it driving around doing a good job that's going to convince anyone anything, because I have several videos myself where the car did an amazing job, and they don't get 1 million views. People don't care when it does a good job. They care when it screws up.
Right. Yeah. I think. By the way, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. I think I agree with basically everything you said. I think the key thing that the context of on which this was done in, I find it hard to believe that it would somehow something like this wouldn't be made into, like he said, be made into a big deal when the person you've invited, you've basically given him all the tools and ammunition that he needs to continue running whatever campaign he has towards towards whatever mission he's on. So I think right. That expectation is strange. From my estimation, it just seems like perhaps Ross wanted to do something that really all of us experience FSD beta that have it, and a huge percentage of the time on the road, especially when the driver is supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is monitoring the system and making sure it's doing so safely. It's for me at least, it feels much safer than, say, the average human. For me,
it is. That's not just you.
Data, right?
Yeah, that's the data from Tesla shows that beta, again, the way it's implemented today is safer than the average driver. It is. So. Yeah. The people that are trying to prove it's dangerous are just silly. I mean, it's just, they're wrong.
It is quite strange. But real quick, I do want to show this though, because it did get really heated in the conversation. Ross did end up sending some flowers to Alexandra. Much love for you and the Tesla community, Gerber, Kawasaki, and Ross. So, it did get heated, but it does, I think they're trying to make it up. and it's completely understandable that there's you know, a little bit of passion behind it. My dogs appear also very excited about what's going on with full self-driving beta. But yeah, yeah, it's been such a strange sort of few days. And I'm so sorry, these dogs are crazy.
I don't think anybody cares. Dogs are cool.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Dogs are cool. Do you have any dogs?
Yeah, I have 2 whippets. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I have a little Chihuahua Terrier and a Super Mutt. She's like 9 breeds. All right,
cool.
let me ask you a question and shut the mic because these guys are going crazy.
Sure.
What the hell was the question I was going to ask? These dogs are driving me nuts. Oh my God, I totally blanked. Okay, they got quiet. Sorry.
Perfect.
Okay,
No
we're
problem.
good now. We're back, everybody. What do you think? So do you think? Okay, I got it back. Do you think this is going to remain in the zeitgeist for a little while? Do you think this is going to blow over? Because I mean, in our echo chamber, I guess this Tesla echo chamber, I think all of us are aware of this video, right? But do you think this is a long-term impact, negative impact on the brand, or do you think this is a nothing burger and we just move on? How do you think about this?
No, it's not definitely a nothing burger. I mean, it'll, you know, we'll talk about it like we are for a few more days or something, and nothing happened. I mean, he did hit the brake. He did. So it's not, you know, if there was actually an accident, then that would have been a big deal, I think. But the clip we have is like, who cares? I mean, people probably experience that all the time. I mean, again, nobody's going to wait. I can't stop saying the same thing because like, that's the most important part. He was trying to show the car can do everything. Nobody drives like that. And he said it himself in the beginning of that clip. He takes over much earlier, which is what you're supposed to do. So, no, I don't think, no, I think this is really nothing. And Dan had his moment and his 10 million views and like, whatever.
Yeah. And then we move on. I think what's interesting is I was when I went to my barber a couple times ago, it was right after, what was it? Must have been 3 times ago now. It was after the Super Bowl, and it was after that ad was run during the Super Bowl about, you know, how, oh, look at how bad FSD is specifically. And then once people, like the first question I got asked at the barbershop was, oh man, is that the car that might hit somebody? Like, what are you talking about? It's like, yeah, it's the Super Bowl ad. I'm like, okay, let me sit you down and sort of like walk you through what's really going on. So I do feel like there is some impact to some percentage of the population that will connect Tesla to that. But I do wonder if it's sort of, you know, if it was really material, wouldn't we be seeing this in the trajectory of the company? You know, would the Model Y really be the best-selling car in the world? Would Tesla be able to, like the point you made around NHTSA wouldn't even be remotely close to allowing this to operate on the roads if it truly was something that was worse on the road than a human, right? I just think it's almost like a dialogue opener where we can sit down and actually talk about the implications of a self-driving technology long term and what it means to have a safe system on the road, because people might forget that humans aren't very good at driving. I mean, we really, really aren't. 40,000 people die every single year. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people on the road, especially around Texas, where I'm like, this dude's totally drunk. He shouldn't be on the road. I'm sure that's the same sort of context that you think this equation through, right? It's like, you know, in the scheme of things, this is just not that big of a deal.
No, people will have a knee-jerk reaction to it. And like, you'll get those conversations. I've had them myself. Even like I've had my mom text me and be like, whoa, like, okay, the submarine thing that everybody went crazy about. She sent me one of the articles that was like, oh, Starlink was on the submarine, which, like, you know, obviously, you know, it was not, it makes no sense. You know, I responded to her. I was like, oh, that you can't actually use Starlink. The title was like Elon Musk's Starlink was on the submarine, whatever. And I responded, I was like, oh, you can't use Starlink underwater. It doesn't work that way. And she goes, what's Starlink? Okay. She didn't even know. She just saw the headline. This is how people react. They don't know.
Clickbait, baby.
Exactly. That's what it is. Just clickbait. They don't really process this. They go, whoa, the self-driving car almost crashed. People have a knee-jerk reaction. It doesn't usually lead to anything. And if it does, once they start, like if they actually get a passion for that, for whatever reason, once they start digging, then they hopefully will find the truth, or a lot more of the truth, right? Or at least a lot more information to pile onto that knee-jerk reaction. And then, you know, they'll come across, well, what the heck? This thing isn't crashing. What are you talking about? So, you know, the knee-jerk reaction is there. I don't think it usually amounts to anything unless their knee-jerk reaction is to the truth, right? So if you kind of like clickbait with the truth, get people interested, and then they kind of dig into it and find, whoa, that person is right. Then that's when you can kind of over time have a bigger change to, something like this, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you there. Let me ask you one last question, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A with the comment section. How's that sound? You okay on time?
Great. I'm great on time. I am boring. I don't do much, so I'm good.
Please. All right, so let's do this. Let's so in the question in the comments below or to the side, I don't even know where YouTube puts it, depending on the platform you're on. If you want to ask a question, make sure you write question in all caps before your question, so it's easier for me to tag it. Our mods are super good at sort of listening to directions as well, in case you need better directions there. But let me ask you this question, and then we'll do Q&A. How closely do you track the stock, and where do you think Tesla's going to end up at the end of the year from a units perspective? Is that something you track pretty closely?
Not in a sophisticated fashion. I love the stock market, and I've been trading stocks for well over 10, probably close to 10 years at this point. But I'm very crude in what I do. It's not very professional. Okay. But I do track Tesla stock. I think right now the price is fine. I don't think it's super high. I think we could go much higher than this. I also don't think it's cheap, but then you look in 6 months, ask me again, and I'm like, I was so stupid not to put my entire net worth in at 250. You know what I mean? But I think like if Tesla achieves a lot of the things that they want to, I mean, the sky's the limit. But personally, not that I think this matters that much, but I look at like market cap of companies. That's kind of my favorite metric to start with. And Tesla's market cap is pretty high. It's not $1 trillion anymore, but it's close. So when you look like realistically in the next 5 years, like, do you think they can 10x? Probably not. That doesn't seem very realistic. Things could change. Maybe, right? Could they 5x again? That's a lot. It's possible, but pretty unlikely. So, I kind of look at it from that perspective. But,
Got it.
If they also make fully autonomous robots that can do literally any job, then okay, they're going to be worth like 100 trillion or something,
All bets are off at that point. Crazy,
right? Yeah,
crazy stuff. Yeah, awesome. All right, let's do a little bit of Q&A. I do want to thank Chris again for making the time to come on, and I want to thank everybody watching. Thank you all so much. We were having a fun discussion about Tesla, FSD, some of the recent drama, but also some stuff that's happening around the company. Let me go ahead and pull up the first question. We already have a few, which is awesome. Our community is so awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We'll start with Jay Lizard, longtime listener of the show. A question: where does Sandy Munro stand on this FSD situation? Why isn't he a central figure in all of this? Have you seen anything come out of that team regarding to this?
Yeah. So Sandy is not that far from me. They're only about 40 minutes away from me or so. Actually, I'm going there this week. And I've talked to him about it before. I think this just, like, in the nicest way possible, I think this just isn't one of their strengths, especially the software side. And last I heard, they're working on getting somebody that is a little more knowledgeable in all of this ADAS type of stuff. Again, especially from software. Last I heard, I've taken him on one FSD beta drive, I think it was a while ago. And, he was talking about FLIR cameras and how that would be really important. And then he was also talking about how he believed, not that there's anything wrong with this, it was just his opinion at the time. One thing that would help Tesla a lot is to have like cameras in the intersection that the cars could basically connect to the camera. It actually sounds like kind of a cool idea. Could connect to the camera in the intersection and have a better view of what's going on everywhere, right? Which, to like Elon or Tesla is like, that makes no sense. We would no, we're not doing that. Cause then what do you do when you get to an intersection without that, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, from my understanding, it's just not really one of their strong suits. But they are working on that. So, they're more on the engineering vehicles side.
Yeah. Are you doing a video with them next week?
Yeah, I don't know if like I'm with them exactly, but they're going to let me, things could change, but they're going to let me take their Lightning out, and I'm going to check out Blue Cruise. Yeah, and I'm going to try Blue Cruise, and compare that too. I'm excited because people seem to like it a lot. So that's what I'll be doing with them. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But I think they're just going to I think they're just going to give me the this is like exclusive. I haven't told anybody this. I think they're
Oh
just
my
going to give me
God.
the truck and I'm going to go
Breaking news.
drive it around. So we'll see how it does.
That's awesome. I wish I had like a breaking news banner or something, but when I don't have my producer, all bets are off here. Let's pull up here. Hey, $10 Canadian super chat. Thank you so much. Match 2 will be Mama versus Ross in the hexagon. This could be the prelim or whatever, the undercard to Elon versus Zuck. That would be a nice little fight there. All right, let's do the next question. Chris, I asked you before in channel comments, can you please make some videos about Tesla's voice recognition software? Can you find us some useful commands?
Sure. So this I'll comment on this for a second. I don't want to take too long, but
Sure.
it goes back to what we talked about earlier in like making content. So number one, I personally don't use the voice commands all that often. I don't know if it's just the old man in me that's like not using the latest thing. But number two, I just personally don't feel like it would be the most popular video, although I like the idea of it because my channel started off as kind of like this educational, like, hey, here's how your Tesla works. Here's what to expect, blah, blah, blah. So from that perspective, I mean, I like the idea, but you just got to understand, like, work full time, the 2 kids, and then trying to do this stuff on the side. I don't have as much time these days as I used to just like sit down and create content like that. I love the idea, and it's in my, I have not seen your comment. So thank you for asking here. I will keep it in my brain, and if I can wrangle that together for you, I will do it, and I'll try to make it entertaining. So it's not just like, you can say open butthole and the charger opens. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'll try to make that entertaining if I can get to it.
You'd be like one of those like AI generated voices. Click here for this command.
Yeah, just
like that TikTok
text
voice.
to speech. Just do text to speech and throw it up there.
Yeah. I mean, I can sort of like also add on to what Chris is saying too. Is like the content. It's the complexity of doing this is a lot more complex than it seems, because you would think, it's you get in front of the camera, you have what you want to talk about, you do that stuff, that's definitely great, but then there's this whole thing, this whole beast that exists in the ether that is like, well, you just put in 40 hours into doing this, but if you don't do these 3 things perfectly, ain't nobody gonna see it, and then you're like, wow, I'm such a loser. So
yeah,
it's tough. It's
made
tough,
me feel
but,
bad.
yeah. But thank you for considering that, and thank you, Matt, for your question. That is awesome. Let's do this question here from Alex. How close are we to a free month FSD trial later this year or sometime in 2024? Where's your head at with this?
Yeah, I actually think we're getting kind of close to that. Again, if you're using beta, you're like, what the heck? It makes mistakes all the time. And I agree with that. But the types of mistakes, in my opinion, it's hard because I'm so used to beta, but the types of mistakes, there's like, for me, like no phantom braking anymore. It is so rare, thank God, because in the early version 10s, it was like nonstop all the time, just like these little breaks. Turns feel really good. It's, again, like what beta can do, it does well when it does it well, if that makes sense. It still makes mistakes, but when it's driving well, it's like, damn, this thing feels like a person. So I actually think we are pretty close to this. Maybe it'll be like part of the holiday update or something.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. The humanness of it, Ross made this comment on the space that it feels it's the most human it's ever felt, and I 100% agree there. The behavior, the comfort, it just for the majority of the time, let's say significantly more than 50%, it feels like a high quality, very mindful driver that's trying its best to be smooth. But then sometimes it's like, why is there a 5-year-old behind the wheel? It's like,
yep, I agree.
It's like that. It's like eruption, it's weird. Cool. Let's do this comment from Ethan. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, brother. Does the system work as well where Chris lives as we see Omar showing NSF? How often do you see his videos, and can you do a quick comparison?
Yeah, so it's definitely not as good as Omar's. He seems to have like perfect drives very often, or next to perfect drives. But I did say to him the other day, like, I felt like you lately because I've had so many good drives. And, it's funny because I have these couple bugs that I talk about where it always wants to drift into the opening lanes, or like we have these, I didn't realize this was weird, but in Michigan, if you have a 2-lane road, like each going one direction, if there's a place to turn left, like into a neighborhood or something, this little shoulder opens up with these dashed lines for you to pass that person that's turning left. I didn't realize that was unique, but a lot of people are seeing it like, what the heck is that thing? Beta screws that up all the time too. It wants to drive there, but it's not a place you drive unless somebody's in your way. So outside of those bugs I'm experiencing, my drives are often very good, with, you know, the occasional hiccup here or there. So not as good as Omar, no, but I have some good drives.
Awesome. Let's do this next one here. This one might be controversial. Feel free not to answer, but it's from Not Legal Advice. He's a very close buddy of mine now, I guess. He comes on our forums often. Richard, do you agree it is more that Ross Gerber is not trustworthy to not act on his enhanced ego? That is the greater question. You don't have to answer this if you don't.
Do you agree it is more than Ross Gerber he's not like basically has a big ego, so we shouldn't trust him?
I guess that's where he's getting
okay.
at.
I don't know the guy. So I mean that'd be super rude of me to say. I don't know. Obviously he's been very successful with Tesla stock and stuff. You know, I think he had good intentions, but I think he just went about it the wrong way. That's all.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Thank you, Richard. Shout out Richard. Not Legal Advice. Check out his channel. Great content. Adam Martinez, question. How is Summon and other features of FSD these days? Haven't seen a video of this in a while. For me, Summon is unusable. How about for you?
I will use it occasionally in the rain. Decently. It's just so slow.
You still there, Chris? I think you're going through some laggy stuff there. Hello?
I hear and see you. Okay. I hear and see you. All right. Okay. So I'm on Starlink, everybody. Okay. So summon for me.
Go get yours now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, I mean, it's pretty good. We've been going for over an hour. Summon for me is not unusable. I would not call it that. I use it occasionally in the rain if it's raining, and it will get to me. It's just so slow that it's like not all that useful. And again, it goes back to, you haven't seen a video of it in a while, because like if I make a summon video, like nobody cares. It's hard because like there are videos like that I want to watch, but when I'm not like a full-time YouTuber, or I don't have the time to like have flops that I don't have time to kind of have flops that often. I really have to kind of pick and choose what I'm going to spend my time on. So I like it. I still think it's cool, but yeah, I don't use it very often.
Awesome. Let's do a couple more here, and then we'll let Chris get on with his evening. Let's do this. Crunch the Grace Hopper. Thank you so much for the $20 super chat. Man, y'all are being very generous today. Chris is going to be drinking a lot, y'all, when I see him. My goodness, the beer fund is getting large. Question. Does it seem that the FSD team applies, 1, maximize separation, and 2, minimize closing speeds as overarching safety, comfort, navigation, first principles? I'm not seeing it. How do you think about that equation?
Man, that's a complex question. So the team's main goal is that the car doesn't crash. So when we see things that we think are dumb or weird or annoying, they're probably not priorities. The priority is don't crash. That's like number one goal, which makes sense. But it can sometimes leave other things on the back burner for long amounts of time that you're like, what the heck, this should be simple. So maximize separation, you're talking about like when you change lanes and getting close to somebody, I'm assuming is what you mean by that. So no, it definitely doesn't seem to be a priority. But it does seem to be something that the car considers. And I mean, it's anecdotal evidence because I'm talking from my experience and I don't have exact clips to show you. Although these things I have shown in videos, but I don't have them like, you know, ready to go. When making a lane change, well, let's start with making a turn. When you make a turn, like a right turn onto a road, if nobody's there, the acceleration is way more gradual, again, in my experience, than if someone's coming up on you. The car will kind of kick it into high gear. And I've actually had it one time where someone, I didn't really like the turn. I thought we cut them off just a little bit. They didn't honk at me or anything. But the car turned and it took off like harder than I've ever felt. And I was like, it's gotta be because there's somebody so close behind me. It has to be because I never have experienced that before. And then same thing, I'll go into lane changes with that. When you, especially highway lane changes, oh my gosh, are so amazing right now. When you make a lane change, if there's a small gap, the car will take it. And sometimes the gap is a little too small to be like, if traffic remains as it is, it's safe. But if the person in front of you is going to slam on their brakes, you may not have enough time to stop, even if you're like a supercomputer doing it quickly. So it will have a close gap there, but I've noticed that it always seems to open it back up for the most part. So I think it's in there. Maybe it's not perfect yet. But yeah, in my opinion, I mean, I think those things are definitely implemented. I hope I answered that the way you were hoping.
Yeah, I think that was a phenomenal answer. I tend to agree with you. I think it's definitely part of the equation. It like depends where and how it's applied. Maybe it's like a default mode, maybe where this kicks in. But there are situations on the road where this, like if you do this, like for example, if you do this in New York, you'll just be at a standstill. You're not going anywhere in New York City, right? So I think it's dependent on what the situation is. But that's a great question, Crunch. Thank you so much for sending that over. A couple more quick ones and then a fun one here, Chris, and then we'll let you go, my friend. Sure. Another Chris. Do you think more cameras are needed?
I do, honestly. Well, it's such a hard question to answer. I think we would greatly benefit from some bumper cameras. So one of my main complaints I will give that I don't think is easily solvable with the setup we have right now, and I could be wrong, is high-speed cross traffic. And when you're in a downtown scenario like Cruise or Waymo, those things are not that important because cross traffic is not very high speed. It doesn't matter. If a car's coming at you with 30 miles per hour, the Tesla has plenty of range in its view to kind of calculate that correctly. When you have cross traffic at like 50, 60 miles an hour, from what I've experienced, I don't believe the car has enough like time from when it first sees it to making the decision to turn, and it doesn't accelerate hard enough almost always. So I really feel if we had higher resolution cameras, number one, which we do have in hardware 4, and number 2, if we could get some side-facing bumper cameras. At this point, I give up. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think higher resolution, number 1, would benefit. And I do believe side-facing, even rear cameras would be good for, I don't think that's that important. But yeah, side-facing front cameras I think would help a lot. But at the same time, Tesla didn't, throw some cameras on and say, cool. They obviously have a reason for the setup they have.
Yeah, I often wonder, because I've seen this happen before where the car, and this is probably more a UI thing, but the car reacts to things that are not showing on the screen that are far away. Have you had that happen to you as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I wonder how much of that is like maybe just the resolution will solve that instead of placement, because maybe even if it's like 2 degrees of the camera, I can see that object moving or something. It could interpret that and put it, I don't know, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but it is interesting that they're so sold on this setup and they've been using it for so long. And even with hardware 4, it doesn't look like we're going to get any sort of change to the setup of the cameras whatsoever. It's just going to be stuck where it's at. So
I think we're getting a front bumper camera.
The bumper, like the Cybertruck one. I think the Cybertruck's got that one in the front.
Yeah, I think we're going to get that on all the cars. But yeah, beyond that,
it's just the one though, right? Like
front facing. And it's yeah, exactly. It's front facing. It's not even side facing. So
yeah, I wonder if it's like 180 degrees. Do you think maybe that would help?
It could be, but on the edges of those, wide angle cameras, it's not. I mean, I'm not a software expert, but from my experience, it's not that usable of footage when you get to the very edge of those cameras anyway. So that's just my guess. I don't think it's going to be that useful for that. That it could be, I mean, what if it's do they make 200-degree cameras and then the edges aren't needed, but that 180 spot is looking good still? That could be good.
Good question. Good question, Chris. Thank you so much. All right, let's do a couple quick ones here. This one's interesting because I've never had to do this for any other Teslas I owned. Actually, I haven't really had to do anything outside of a couple trim changes because of rattling. And there was one a handle on a front door, on the front passenger door in one of my Model S's that I owned back in the day. Question: have you had your front suspension arms replaced? I had both of mine replaced under warranty twice. I have the 10th generation version. Did you have this issue? Have you experienced this with yours?
No, I had a Model 3 that I got to 50,000 miles, and I had the splines fixed. I don't know what those are, but they're part of the wheel, and they were making like a clicking noise. So I had those fixed. I guess it probably would have come back. There's not much you can do with those. And then my Model Y is at 40,000 miles, and I haven't had those replaced. No.
Okay. In the comment section, if anybody has, let Max know. It'd be good data for Max to have. But yeah, unfortunate that you went through that, and hopefully everything's good now. All right, last question. We'll make it a fun one. Matt really wants to get this question in. I was looking at your tweets, Chris. Can you guys please talk about this elephant in the room, the Elon Zuck Lex GSP drama? Thanks, do it. Haha. Please, guys.
Guys, who's GSP? Sorry,
George St. Pierre. So he's like he's a OG UFC guy, like big time. Yeah. So he said he's going to coach Elon, and then Lex said he's going to coach Zuck. I guess one of those two things. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, go for it. What do I care? I mean, I hope they don't get like seriously injured, but I think it'd be hilarious. Like, you know, at the end of the day, like we're all humans. Of course, like Zuckerberg and Musk are highly accomplished and they're super rich and like, you know, very smart or whatever you want to say, but they're still humans. So if they want to fight, like go for it. That sounds sweet. I mean, I would watch it. And dude, think of how much money they would raise for charity. Like,
it would be incredible.
A lot of money. So yeah, who cares? Yeah, I saw that from Lex. That's
Did you see
awesome.
this one?
Did you see the memes already on that one?
Yeah, dude.
Oh my God.
It's awesome.
So
I
good.
replied, I said, the walrus looks deadly.
Smart. That's a good reply. That's a good reply.
Look at the walrus right there. Look at
He's
him.
right on
Oh my
top
God.
of him.
You can see his veins. He's like really putting an effort. Dude, he looks angry.
He looks
That wrist
mad.
control is legit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. I think if it does happen, it will be great for charity. But I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to make this prediction live for the first time. This ain't happening. I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I think, I mean, unless there's like, we wait a year and Musk does a lot of training, I think he might get his butt kicked, but he's also way bigger than Zuckerberg is. So, you know, that matters. I mean, even if you're untrained, like that matters a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see if it does happen. I'm sure it'll be like a very safe affair. I'm sure Zuck won't try to choke out imagine I'm sure his insurance doesn't cover for that if it ends up being bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, bad stuff can happen. I had a friend who did MMA and I went to one of his matches and he snapped the guy's arm. I mean, he didn't try, but it was so loud. He just did whatever move he did. And it was like crunch and the whole place was like, oh, you know, and he felt bad. He didn't want to do that, but it's just those things happen when you are in those sports.
Damn, man, that's crazy. How do you watch MMA at all? Are you a big MMA guy?
Nah, I mean, I look at the highlights, but no, I don't watch it too much.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen what was it? I saw the Silva fight against Rockhold where he like shattered his what was it? His the lower part of his leg. I saw Connor shatter his ankle area. Yeah, I've seen a few breaks. It sucks, but I can't stop watching the damn.
I agree. I agree. You can't look away, but it's terrible.
Yeah, it's like testosterone. It's something about testosterone. Just can't stop it. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Chris. I really appreciate everything you do. I love your videos, man. I know, like I said before at the beginning of the interview or the podcast, whatever you want to call this conversation, it's clear that you put in a lot of effort into your stuff, and I can tell it's a labor of love, and it's awesome, man. So thank you so much for doing what you do, and I really appreciate you coming on and speaking with me. Any parting words for the community?
Everybody subscribe to Farzad if you have not. Very important to do. That's all I got.
Go subscribe to Dirty Tesla. The mods have dropped all that stuff in the comment section below. We'll make sure to include that in the description as well. And we'll see you guys in the next one. We'll do a little outro here because I don't have producer wife and I got to do it. I almost forgot. Peace out, everybody. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Wow.